I guess the number one challenge, and I'm only going to speak about one, actually, not many. It's I want to call it the lost in hype syndrome. So we live in a world of hype. Everything is hype. So you need first party data, CRM, you need to personalize your marketing, you need to have commerce, you need to have D2C, retail media, metaverse, marketplaces, product design, experience strategy, UX, Salesforce deployment, tech stacks, metaverse, AI, so can you imagine being a marketer and having all of this being funneled at you day to day, day to day. So I think the biggest challenge that marketers have is not getting lost in the hype. I think the opportunity is, and the ones that are successful, is the one that connects the dots and really uses the channels to amplify what is really true and what marketers do best. And I think for me, when I think about not getting lost in the hype, it's kind of simple things that we learned a really long time ago, but I guess our industry has a great way of hyping things. So I kind of put it down to like maybe five things. So firstly, it's just be true to your brand. Know your brand, be true to your brand, execute ruthlessly. You really, and I choose my words very carefully, you have to execute ruthlessly. And then surprise and delight along the customer journey. Figure out what those moments that really matter and surprise and delight the consumer, the customer, and do it in a transparent manner for everyone to see. I think that's the number one thing that everyone wants to know today. And above all, it's the old adage, it's the oldest thing in the marketing playbook, is really know and understand your consumer. So if you get those five things pretty right, I think then you have an army of things to execute. And that's what the hype's about, is executional points, not necessarily points of difference. But I think, if I look at a marketer that we help, one of the UK retailers, they connect the dots really well, and that's Boots, and they connect the dots across the spectrum, and you can kind of see it in their performance. They have an ROI of about £5 to every dollar on their latest kind of initiatives, which is amazing, right? But they don't get lost in the hype. I think the CMO there is very poignant about what he does. So it's just, again, don't get lost in the hype and know your consumer. If you know your consumer, you're going to know things like cost of living crisis. You're going to know what social values mean to them. And for me, that's kind of the only big headline I have is like, don't get lost in the hype. I have this kind of underlying belief, and you're going to see it throughout my answers, is the marketing world necessarily hasn't changed, or the principles haven't changed, but our ability to execute across different channels has really changed. So I think what's really important is kind of go back and really understand, what is your brand story? What is your brand's purpose for existing in life today? What value does it add to a consumer and or a customer? And I think once you do that, you've already understood your consumer, because you need a really strong understanding. I need to understand you. I need to understand your behaviors. I need to understand your likes and what my role of my brand is within that context. And then I would say tell it in unexpected ways. I think the last part of it is, how do you tell your brand story in an unexpected way that cuts through all the clutter? We are bombarded today with messages, from things like this to your LinkedIn feeds, to your social feeds, to even reading a newspaper. You're kind of constantly bombarded. And I think telling your story in unexpected ways is really important. The first one is thinking about the customer experience in an omni-channel uh, experience. So, like, we don't know which consumers want to interact where in the journey. So you kind of need to think through the entire omni-channel experience. The second one is really creating a quality experience throughout, making sure there's not one element that falls apart. I think this is really important, because you're only as good as your weakest link. I think the third is around personalization. Brands or consumers expect some form of personalization, especially if you're being a loyal consumer of that brand. So I, Andrew, expect something from American Express in a personalized way, as an example. And then there is a level of the fourth thing I would say is, how do we be empathetic to customers along that journey? Because they may be calling in with a problem, or they may be calling in with, some praise. But how do you apply empathy along that journey? And then the fifth is, obviously we live in a technology-enabled world, but it's not about technology at the service of the customer experience, but how do we deploy technology and get the best out of our customer experience? I have a blessed to have, a really big team that is always kind of scouting for talent. So by the time I'm meeting the talent, their capabilities have already been vetted. Like, can they do the job? Are they talented in that specific skill set, or in commerce, or in technology, or in customer experience, or in creativity? Um, when I finally kind of get to meet, what I'm actually looking for is what I call the 10% of magic. And so that 10% of magic is really, in my mind, it's kind of like 90% of of the criteria weighting. So not that I'm giving any secrets away here, but that magic kind of comes in many forms, right? So you kind of have to assess it in the role. Like, how do they creatively imagine problem solving? What have they done in the past that kind of is really something that is out of the box type of thinking? To do they really understand different cultures? Like, I kind of have a preference for people that have lived in many different places, because I know that adjusting to cultures and integrating into cultures forms different muscles. Do they speak different languages? Are they able to kind of walk into Italy knowing that they speak Italian, or Spain that they speak Spanish, and can kind of quickly form relationships and kind of move on and accelerate what their job potential is? So every role has its own unique version of magic. But I often kind of get surprised and delighted by the candidates that actually bring that magic forward, and they kind of can talk about it, that what makes them special. So again, it's my unique vantage point, because there's, like, a lot of people assess them on the very difficult questions on capability, and more or less, by the time the three people that often come across my desk, more or less, they're on paper, they're similar. And so what I'm looking for is, how will they integrate culturally into our company? How will they add to the culture in a new and surprising way? And what type of magic will they bring as individuals? And I think that's, for me, the softer side of things, of what we look at today.